welcome back to Takedown MMA. I am Evan Herzog of the Fight Magazine. This is Albert Rosales of Grinders Fitness in Denver, Colorado. And we are back after a week layoff. We let some stuff stew. It's springtime. The fight atmosphere is starting to pick up. And last night, or I guess it was yesterday afternoon for us, UFC Fight Night London took place. Volkov versus Verdum was the main attraction to this card, and I had a chance to watch it. It was a tough card to watch. A lot of people forgot about it. It kind of went under the radar. There were a couple fights on there that I was excited for, and they paid off. One with Volkov and Verdum, and the other one was Jan Blachowicz and Jimmy Manuwa. That was the co-main event. Also a great fight. But it was on Fight Pass. It was on UFC Fight Pass only, so not near the amount of eyes got to see this card that normally do. But I want to talk about Mr. Volkov. If you didn't watch the fight, go check out the highlights. He stopped Fabricio Verdum in the later rounds of their main event, and it was super impressive. He was able to kind of hold off the takedown early of Verdum and tag him and touch him up and hurt Verdum to cause some injuries to the eye that really changed the landscape of the fight. And, you know, if people didn't know who Alexander Volkov was before, they do now.
Well, I think Volkov, he's got some serious talent. You know, he's an up-and-comer, and I think there's a lot of things he does really well. He's going to create some problems for a lot of the guys in that division. As far as Verdum goes, he's just the kind of guy who's always going to be near the top, you know, but he's just so inconsistent, you know, and that kind of drives me nuts about him. Like, you know, he shows up one day and smokes Cain Velasquez, and then he comes out and lays an egg against somebody else. You know, he's just very, very inconsistent. He's got the talent to beat anybody on any given day. Just depends on which guy shows up, you know. The card as a whole, there's a reason it was on Fight Pass. You know, like that's not, I mean, you go through and look at the roster and look at the names on the card, and you're like, I don't know who that guy is, I don't know who that guy is. And that's no disrespect to those guys, you know, obviously, like,
those only way European you get cards, they try to build the lesser known European cards, is what I've noticed.
Listen, the only way you get those guys more well known is to put them on a card where people can watch them.
Exactly.
You know, if you put them on a Fight Pass card, you're almost just kind of tucking them under a table and saying, hey, here's what we got, you know. And especially being in London, listen, they've got enough good name fighters. You could even put one or two more guys on there. Even if you put a bigger name on there, just to get people to watch the Fight Pass card, I think that's a better deal. Jimmy Manuwa, that's another guy. Man, I feel bad for that guy because that guy's got all the talent in the world, man. That guy can do some serious damage, and he's another one. He just can't get over the hump, you know. You see him come out and just pace somebody, you know, and then the next fight, you know, he has one of these, and a lot of people actually forget that these two already fought before. Yep. You know, Mano was saying the whole time leading up to this that this fight didn't make sense. You know, it just didn't make sense. But you're not going to go down there to his hometown or his home country, whatever, and not have him on a card. You know, right. So he kind of just had to take it. And you see it just
especially when Bisping fell off, because remember that this was supposed to be the swan song for both Michael Bisping and Vitor Belfort.
Right.
It was, and I don't think Bisping wanted that fight to begin with. I think we all know how, and whether he thinks he could beat Vitor or not, I think he betters Vitor now. I just think that we've seen, you know, the issues with Vitor without testosterone and other things that are, you know, it's heavily publicized that he had to come off of testosterone. Right. But I don't think he won that fight because he tested hot when he fought Bisping and gave, you know, Bisping a handicap.
Personally, I think Vitor would still beat Bisping. I still think he would, and I think that's the reason that Bisping didn't want the fight. But either way, even if you did have that fight on the card, to me that makes it at least a little bit more appealing. So people are like, oh, maybe I do log on to UFC. Honestly, because my thoughts, and I watch all fights. Like, I don't care, you know, like if there's a fight on, I'm going to check it out at least, you know, if there's a couple of good names on it. And I saw that card and I'm just like, there's nobody on that card that I'm dying to see. You know, if I watch it, great, but I'm okay with just missing it. So, I don't know. I feel like the UFC's got to do a better job of kind of building up their Fight Pass cards. Like, if you really want Fight Pass to work, you got to do a little better than Verdum and Volkov as your main event.
To build off that, I think that it kind of shows where the promotion's at in Europe. I think they're more, they have a lot of talent over there that I agree they should be putting them on cards that is seen in the prime time of where, the homeland of the UFC is,
right
here in the States. But I think it kind of speaks to where the UFC's at promotional-wise, because I'm always kind of taking a look at it from that angle too, on sales and how they're doing things. Is I think they're worried that maybe the popularity isn't there fully yet, and that's why you're seeing them put a lot of local fighters on the cards. Kind of how they very rarely, and it makes no sense to me. I think they should do it more here in the States, putting fighters in their backyard more. It happens, but rarely. And I think in Europe it happens almost every card.
Right.
You hear from that town. Brazil, they have 80% of the dudes there from that
right.
area of Brazil too. So maybe going forward, in a couple of years, once the new ownership gets its hold, I think we'll start to see maybe more of the bigger fights over in Europe.
Right.
But who knows?
Well, it's not like they don't sell out their arenas either. Like, I mean, they've always got great crowds down there. And honestly, like, the amount of talent and the amount of shows that they put on down there, let's give them credit for that. It's improved quite a bit. I mean, really, even if you think back to, to the older days, who was one of the first names you hear from, from the UK? Lee Murray.
Right.
Okay, and so you look at it from the Lee Murray days to where it's at now, like it's grown exponentially. So
huge, especially when certain parts of Europe have continued to outlaw MMA, and they won't sanction fights. France, I'm pretty sure you can train and whatnot, but there's no sanctioned MMA fighting in France. So I think it's a slow build. But I wish, because I guess my point is that here they don't care about that. They just care about trying to sell a card no matter where it's at. They'll put two dudes that make no sense headlining in St. Louis that are from both coasts or whatever. And I wish that they'd almost flip-flop. They'd start to do more of those fights to save a card in Europe and use the hometown of the United States fighters to kind of back them, because as we've seen, the smaller countries really get behind their fighters, like really push, and they travel well. I think the only way you can start to see that with fighters from stateside is if you really start to push their state pride.
Right.
Like we saw it with Miocic fighting Alistair Overeem in Cleveland. Was that not awesome?
Yep.
And we don't see that. We complain about it all the time with American fighters. Like, we'd let the Irish take over every single time Vegas comes around. Well, maybe if they started pushing, whoever, like if say Gaethje goes on a run and they put him in Denver or put him in Arizona, one of his two home, which they are this time, and it just goes to show that if you are willing to put your body on the line, the UFC will put you in front of the people that they love. But they should do that every time. Miocic now it's been 3 fights since he was in Cleveland. It's time to take him back to Cleveland.
Right.
And in Europe, send those fights that don't make sense. If they don't make sense in St. Louis, it'll make perfect sense over in Europe.
Right.
Because you build the momentum of the card. But I don't know. Who am I? I didn't build a $4 billion
the good news is at least you're getting these young kids, the ones that were on the card yesterday. At least you're getting them fights. Okay, so they're getting out there and they're getting to be active, and it's just, to me, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot a little bit if you don't put them on a card where they can actually be seen. If nobody knows who you are, why would they tune into Fight Pass? So I don't know. It's kind of a mixed bag for me, but
it's like
it
Volkov.
is what it is. I feel like they're honestly just trying to fill a card. So it is what it is.
That's a huge win for Alexander Volkov.
Well, I can guarantee you. I can guarantee you that his next one, he's going to get more. He's going to get more eyes on him, whether it's on a Fox card or if it's on a pay-per-view card. So he got what he wanted, and he came out with a signature win. So good for him.
6'7" monster. I think it's good to. We say he's kind of new blood for the UFC. The guy has over 30 plus fights. 20 knockouts, and he is newer to me too, but you know, a lot of these guys are going to have to be very careful with him because he's not new to combat. He's just new blood in the heavyweight division. That's exactly what the heavyweight division
He's going to have a lot
do.
of guys saying no to fighting him. That's the way it's going to be. There's going to be a
6'7".
lot of guys that turn him down.
And his striking was beautiful.
Yep.
He's like Alexander Gustafsson, but with some power, you know, a little bit thicker. But I know that I was excited. I did not expect that. I thought we'd see Verdum kind of come away with a ground attack and another submission. And maybe this just goes to show that he caught Kane at a bad time.
I think that's perfect storm. Yeah, perfect storm. Mexico City elevation, that kind of stuff.
Fabricio's been called the GOAT at certain points, but this has got to change a little bit.
That always drove me nuts.
So, well, it's exciting though. We got a new prospect on the heavyweight.
And the heavyweight division needs it.
It needs it badly, especially after Bellator kind of handpicked all of their older veterans. So, congrats to Alexander Volkov. Shout out to everyone that fought over at UFC London. Try to catch the replay of it on Fight Pass. It's already up there if you haven't. Get some eyes on some of these kids and hopefully start to see some new blood in all weight divisions. But that's going to do it for our first segment here at Takedown MMA. Catch us on ibtv.us and Roku TV. Evan Herzog,